It's 1992 and the new look Boom Crash Opera is about to unleash their third full-length album. It's their first without founding member Richard Pleasance and has been recorded in Los Angeles during the LA riots. To talk about the album, we have singer Dale Ryder, guitarist Pete Farnan, keyboardist Greg O'Connor and drummer Peter Maslen. The new album is a revelation, and Dale, the first track is My Revelation.
It is a revelation too. That's sort of apt track to open the record, I reckon, because recording the whole album was a real revelation. We wrote that, and you wrote that in.
Oh, it was written. It was one of the few tracks that was existed before we went to America. We wrote most of the album in America, but My Revelation was something that we'd played live in Australia, but we couldn't put it on the record just like that. So the lyrics were still being written like just before Dale went in to sing them.
See, I wrote about 3 sets of lyrics for that song, and in the end it was like lyric by democracy. Greg and I, and even one of the managers, we all sat down with these words, and everyone had a line each to chuck into the song. It was so funny.
It had to really say something about what we'd gone through, like the awakening that living and writing in America and making Fabulous Beast was all about. Interestingly, the song, we started recording it the week that the riots happened. So on Monday, Keith Forsey's wife gave birth to a little girl, and when was the verdict brought down? Tuesday?
Yeah, that's correct.
And which is when we started recording it. And by Thursday, there was just chaos. Like it was like the trouble on the streets had infected everything, as it naturally did. It completely upset the flow of everyday life. And we almost lost the song. Yeah, we almost lost the song, and we had to sort of fight to get it back, which we did the next week.
Well, it sets the tone for the rest of the album, and Pete, the lyric of Revelation mentions the beast. Why did you call the album Fabulous Beast?
Boom Crash Opera has so many arms and legs and brains and different strands, and they really needed. It felt like we'd almost gathered them together in the past, but then they'd fly off again. And with this album, it was like reining them all in and stringing it together so that everybody was contributing as powerfully as they could individually, so that the collective beast was as fabulous as it could be. And in a way, the band is the Fabulous Beast.
Yeah, traditionally the songs from Boom Crash Opera have come from Richard and you, Pete. But this next track on the album, This Isn't Love, is one of yours, Dale. What kind of competition is there to get a song on the record?
We were all writing in this house. We were all sort of sitting around, and everyone was writing. It was getting quite competitive, because we'd write a few songs during, for a couple of days, and we'd get together twice a week or something, when the producers would come down, and we'd play them all these songs. And there'd be songs that would get a Guernsey and not. And I had a couple of things and I wasn't getting a Guernsey. I went, got to write something that's going to be on this album, So I was sitting in my room writing, and I thought, I like World Party, and I was trying to write a jaunty little thing about us being so, even the world becoming closer, yet individually becoming really isolated from each other, becoming really detached and worried about ourselves rather than anybody else. That's why I was trying to think this thing called this, and that isn't love. It isn't love at all. We should be loving each other. And then Richard came in and said, "Yeah, that's good. Keep working on that." And so wrote some lyrics and had this thing. I played it to our programmer Tommy Sims, and from a jaunty little acoustic piece, it turned into this sort of rock thing. And then Richard put the riff on top. And then the band sort of played it, and it became something that was so different to what I'd envisaged, which is great.
Interesting that little wacky section in the middle almost came straight out of we'd played the song twice in the rehearsal room and just happened to have the cassette player playing, and that we were in the studio a couple of days after that recording the thing, and we just played what was on the wacky rehearsal tape.
Yeah.
Spontaneity.
Yeah. It's the first album without Richard Pleasance, an integral part of the band. Did that put a little bit of extra pressure on the rest of you guys?
Richard came to LA, and we wanted him to help do an album because he was part of the band, and in a way he always will be. But if you're not touring with the band, I think you lose sight of what it's all about. Because the band, when we're touring, we're always talking about what we want to do, what we're doing, how we're doing it. The rest of it, it's like it's a family that talks much more now than we ever did. And so Richard had sort of lost a lot of that communication with us, and so he came to LA with another view of what he wanted, and the four of us were in another space, and so it didn't really gel because Richard's was being a bit more subtle about his music, and we've always been bombastic and very cheeky about what we wanted to do, and so Richard sort of co-wrote a couple of songs, but didn't actually. He didn't gel with us this time, which is a real shame.
Although you hear his guitar all over the place.
Yeah.
He plays on over half the record. And but in a way, as Dale said, it was like we'd lived a lot of life without him.
2 years almost.
But the band's like a family, and it's difficult to let go, both for us to let go of Rich and for Rich to let go of us. So he's officially on paper gone, although he lingers, I suppose, with all of us.
We think he's just the wayward son.
It's a good way of looking at it. Now, the second single is In the Morning. Pete, it's one of your songs that you've written with Greg.
People keep saying the Beatles to me, I think, don't they? Spock and I kind of knocked that up. It was part of this whole unself-conscious thing that songs should not be laboured over. You should feel free to say the simplest of things, and In the Morning was literally me going to bed going, I wonder what I'm going to do in the morning. I started writing the song immediately before I went to sleep, got up in the morning and said, Spock, what do I do with this? And he sort of went... and, it's hard to say anything complicated about the song. It's quite optimistic. It has a sort of fresh youthfulness about it, but it once again, it has a slightly sinister side as well that's just kind of hovering in the background ominously.
Yeah, the album is quite different to what we've come to expect from the band. You mentioned the Beatles before. Is it fair to say there's a slight 60s feel to the album?
Definitely, yeah. Looking back now in hindsight, it's sort of, the melodic content of this album is more than it's ever been, I think, than other albums, and we were exploring 60s and conscious of that at the time.
Yeah, so. It was more the way that records were made in the 60s, where there was none of this laborious premeditation and sort of thought about the demographic and the marketing and incredible scrutiny of every element that you put on a record, so it's pristine and hi-fi. I mean, records in the 60s, they thought about what they wanted to do, and then it was done very unself-consciously, and there were lots of stray notes and scratchy bits, but the attitude and the emotion was always the main thing. And more than thinking about any particular artist, we were actually after that. We were listening to lots of records that had that while we were in America, and we wanted to capture that sort of first take vibe on everything we did. We didn't want to over-rehearse songs. We didn't want to rehearse songs even.
Yeah. Well, we did, but Don Gaiman didn't.
Well, he said, I know your names, that's all I need to know.
Yeah. But we found it was more interesting to go into a room, play the songs a couple of times without really knowing what they were, how they went. Like often we didn't all know the chords and we didn't agree on where it would start and where it would end, but we just let each player inhabit the song. And if it sounded like a band sound, we agreed to record it, and we agreed to record it like the next day or the next week, and we didn't learn it after that. We let it happen in the studio from a performance level up, and that's where I think the 60s thing comes strongly, that unself-conscious thing.
It was very exciting too, because I remember one night Pete and I, with Better Days, we just rolled the tape, and out it came, just two together, got the sound up, and we did it again on Look Up What's Coming Down. We just explored, there was we had a rough idea of what we were going to do, but, parts were made up on the spot and kept. So we'd never done that before.
Yeah, two guitar players hammering away in the same room.
It was fantastic. It was like a gig.
Yeah, the sensational moment at the end of My Revelation, there's three of us going for it. There's Richard's in there playing the guitar and Spock's playing and I'm playing. But there's this great moment at the end where Spock goes, all right, I'm finished, and takes the guitar off and leans it against the amp and walks out of the room. And the whole unself-conscious, accept everything as it comes at you, don't clean it up. that's all there even in the mixing of the record. So where some artists would pull a noisy guitar leaning against an amp out, we turned it up and it sounds great.
You mentioned Better Days, which was the first single late last year. Is that one that came out of the recording process in Los Angeles?
Well, I think I wrote most of it and then Spock and Dale helped me finish it. It was written about a week after the riots. It was written, I think, the day before Richard went home. And it's funny that at a time of great stress, when not only is the band fighting to get its vision down, but the city's just erupted as well, I think it affected us all profoundly. It even affected us the way that it was dampened down quickly after it happened. Mm-hmm. And as the band was struggling to get its vision down and to really distill the essence of who we were and to make sure that everybody was putting their utmost in, and that the dynamic between the individuals in the band was even and balanced and everyone was going hard at it, you've got the actual city, the society you live in, sort of falling to pieces around you. And there were great forces of chaos at work while we were trying to bring the record together, which probably made it sound better because I think the record bristles with life rather than being rarefied and purified and, all studioed up so it's nice. It's quite an alive and jostling sound, I reckon.
Yeah, and quite a contradiction too. You're in the middle of Los Angeles, in the middle of the Rodney King riots, but the song, Better Days, still manages to sound optimistic.
It has a wish for hope, but it doesn't deny the dark side. The lyric is actually quite dark. And a lot of the music on Fabulous Beast, in fact, the whole idea of Fabulous Beast is that the light and the dark are there at all times, that it's a beast.
We're not naive about it, yeah. We know what exists, and we just, rather than put it down, we're sort of dealing with it. All of us dealt with what happened in LA as a team, and that album is what it is. It's just dealing with the problems of the world, basically.
We lived the light and dark within the group, like a bit like a family, figuring out how it functions and how it dysfunctions and trying to get that into kilter. The city is out of whack as well, but there's always this spirit of celebration in Boom Crash music, that it goes through the darkness in life, but there's always a more triumphant energy in it, and Better Days, I think, has that. It could have been just a jaunty little song, but I think it's a lot more than that.
Let's have a look at the song Colour of Love. There's a lot of layers to this song too.
My favourite track on the album. That almost... I remember when we were rehearsing that, Richard was saying, I don't know if I like this melody. It's a bit too sort of... da-da-da-da-da, it's just that. And
So we sent him home.
yeah, we sent him home. I just love the lyric. I read more into Peter's lyrics than I think he does sometimes, or a totally different vision of what the lyric is. And I was thinking of this whole album. I kept thinking about the world as being as one. It sounds kind of a little old-fashioned, but I've always wanted peace and harmony in the world. I deal my life like that. And this Colour of Love thing was, to me, the colour of people. There's one race, one world, colour of love, and the lyric means that to me. And it's also kind of honey soul, and that's why it's my favourite track. It's just got this honeyness about it. Beautiful song.
Yeah, if there's one word that pops up on this record, Fabulous Beast, it's the word love, and it's a word that Boom Crash Opera have always been too self-conscious or a bit too precious or clever or something to... I don't know what it is, but we never really used the word.
I think self-conscious is a good word.
We let it out. Like, we let the word... we said it once, it just started bursting. It was in all the songs,
But I think being so far away from home, separated and detached from loved ones and familiar surroundings, you're actually forced to face that. And so that's what we were dwelling on a lot. I know I was, in particular... all the feelings that sustain you through those like almost dark periods where you're not really sure where you're going, and with the riots going on, and we just couldn't get out of that bloody town. we couldn't get a plane out, and it was all starting to compress and close in. And when we tackled all these little problems within ourselves, it was a great outlet. And because we did it together, it gave us a bit of a bond and good old male bonding. So it ended up being a positive thing and celebration of love rather than, the downside of it.
Or the corny side of it.
Yeah, we were trying to be as honest as we could.
Yeah, it's funny. The colour of love, it does have a sweetness, as Dale says, and a sense of romance in the music. Yet, for me, the Western romance myth is just one of the great evils. And it's funny that it can be a romantic song as it is, but it still admits that there are a lot of frustrations and a lot of dark alleyways running off the boulevard of love.
To get lost in.
To
get lost in. Yeah.
Right. Well, you've worked with two different producers on the album Fabulous Beast. There's Keith Forsey and Don Gemmon. And traditionally when you're recording an album, to keep the sound consistent, two different producers is quite different.
Well, they both wanted to record it, to produce this, right? And we thought, why just use one when you can have two? And they both brought different things to the music. Don and both absolutely the opposite of each other. One very high on vibe, one very high on technology, one very laborious and deliberating, one totally almost disregarding the musicians for the song, so to speak. Don Gemmon hated rehearsals. Like Matt said, he said, "I know your names, what more do we need?" And Keith Forsey, look, we need to get this down in the studio, in the rehearsal studio first before we can actually record it. But both brought these different elements to the music, which I think sort of shows. If you listen to the music, you can hear, although it's got a continuity, I can still see the difference between the two guys.
It's funny because Keith Forsey, who I think we all have great admiration for, he really fought for the spirit of the band and for all the power and enthusiasm that we sort of have naturally but sometimes don't recognise. Well, Keith fought for it, and one night in one of his late night raves, as Keith is wont to do, he said, "It isn't these producers who make the records, it's you, it's the band. If you people don't fight for what you want, the record will be piss weak."
And don't blame me afterwards.
Yeah, well, he wasn't actually looking for an escape route, but he was right. We actually fought for stuff with both the producers, and in the end, the process that we made the record was like a synthesis of both their work. When we worked with Keith, he wanted us to rehearse, and we said no. We want it to be unself-conscious, and it worked out. Everything was sort of negotiated out, like, we want this, and he'd say, I want this, and we'd fight it out. And
we'd win in the end.
Well, the record would win in the end, but it is true that it comes down to the energy a group's got, and you've got to sort of have that rather than let some producer make your record.
And with that in mind, the next song on the album, Strike a Match, is one that was produced by Don, and it's also one of the songs that wasn't written in LA.
Peter wrote that song in Australia, and then Greg sort of gave it this amazing, what do you always use?
Otherness.
That's actually the only song that's remained sort of intact from the writing in Australia. That apart from Revelation, which was like a part of it, but Strike a Match was basically the song was there. It's always been there, and we were going to record it no matter what.
If ever any song contained the Boom Crash Opera light and dark thing, it's Strike a Match, like literally talking about light and darkness and the strive to be happy in the face of what sometimes seems like completely frustrating human frailty, if you like.
Yeah, even though it's the oldest, we're alluding to all that quite some time ago with that song, and when we did go to America again, it was a chance to focus on that thing again and really bring it out. So that one foretold the Fabulous Beast, I think.
Well, Fabulous Beast does sound like a group effort. It's a band that's heading in the same direction.
The band is a fabulous beast, and there are so many divergent personalities that the one thing that brought us together was living in the one house. That it was that simple. Just put us all together, and then
see what happens.
We would function as a band rather than as individuals, all sort of pulling against the energy that we have. So we all looked inwards, and immediately all the sort of little personal taste fell away, and we all just focused on what it was that we made together that was important and good. And it was something that was right in front of our faces. It was in Strike a Match and we never knew it. It was even on our other records. It was on Onion Skin and The Best Thing. And we just wanted to get the richness and diversity that we have had on record before, but it's been sprawled across an album. We wanted to get it in every song, and I think we managed to do it.
Yeah, well, certainly that's noticeable, especially on the next track, Look Up What's Coming Down.
It's funny, the original thing, what originally went...
Did I read?
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah, sort of had that and nothing else. Really.
But that was the charming part of the song. It's like with some of the other songs, it's got that Eastern 60s psychedelia without ripping anybody off, you know. And when I heard that chorus, Peter, the original chorus went, then I realized, look up what... I thought, great, what a great chorus. Let's just get the rest of the words to fit. And he came through in the end, and then Greg and him sort of playing these great guitars on it. It's just got that... It's got a real 60s psychedelic sort of thing with this great groove in the back.
With
like
the band, sorry.
Like a Turkish nightclub.
That's right. And then Maz, you sort of program in your drum machine the sort of Turkish, and it just came together. It was really good.
Yeah, it was. There's always been a hint of Easternish thing about our band, but we've never really been aware of it. It sort of was filtering through on The Best Thing, but it took other people in America to spot it. That we kind of do a rock band, but there's an exotic flavour, and it's once again it was right in front of our faces, and a lot of it comes from Dale and the fact that Dale's ethnicity. Yeah, he was born in India. You know,
bloody Indian.
And so once we sort of thought, oh, that's in the mix. That's part of the Fabulous Beast.
Put some tablas on there. Where you go?
Yeah, it just came popping out on Look Up What's Coming Down fairly quickly and fairly unselfconsciously.
Well, the last Boom Crash Opera album, 1989's These Here Are Crazy Times. It's a little over 3 years ago.
God, is it that long? And
you got to start all over again, kind of thing, almost. You know,
we've been, even though out of sight, we've been very busy.
Being in mind.
If we're not touring, we're off writing or doing something. So time does get away, you know, and. We obviously aren't a prolific band, but we intend to change that.
But we capitalised on the success of the last album by touring and sustaining our sort of living. So yeah, we constantly toured. That record was in the charts for over a year, so it was a good reason to keep out there on the road.
And there's the great Lost Boom Crash Opera album as well, which is in fact the third album that was kind of recorded but never put out. But it's not so much we're not prolific.
It's a bit like the other brother, isn't it? It's a bit like the other brother.
Yeah, we're not
the Black Album.
Songs,
but in the sense, like people go, "Oh, gee, you don't put out many records," so then they perceive you as not being quite prolific. But we feel we are. But like I said, we're going to embark on making a lot more records this year, and
5 albums this year.
5.
Remember this?
We'll concentrate on this one first. The next track on the album, What a Good Night. How did this one come about?
Well, remember the Wizards of Oz?
Well, they went to LA and a week after the riots, which was a really silly thing to do. And everything. Who gives us stuff if a bunch of Australians come in? We just had a bunch of riots here.
So all these Australians turned up in our town,
our house,
even our house, and they were, we had a few parties and Good Night. But at the same time, there was this paranoia about writing songs, and Good Night literally came out of a party we had one night in John Stevens' hotel room.
Although John wasn't there because of the Wizards of Oz, I might add. He was there just writing songs and hanging out.
Yeah, but I didn't know what it was about this evening, but it was some sort of reflection on how you sometimes have to let your hair down before you focus again on things. So Good Night is a bit of a stomper about that.
Hence the credit, thanks to John Stevens for his revelation.
When you said our house there and Australians came over to see us, did you still feel like Australians while you were recording in LA?
When we first arrived there, we did. But we were soaking it up, by the minute.
So long anyway.
And in the end, we felt like we were part of the furniture, and nobody freaked out driving on the right-hand side of the road anymore.
You don't hear accents anymore. You only hear Australian accents. I didn't hear any Australian accents within the band, but if someone else outside of the band came into the house and
certainly
talked,
when Wizard of Oz came down,
Yeah.
the Poor Boys and all those bands, yeah, and it was like, oh wow, because
And
we all
it's-
met at this nightclub. They had their party, the opening sort of party.
Palace.
It was like, well, all your lost mates are here, Kate Sobrano and Deborah Conway, and it's just like, it's amazing, all these accents everywhere.
All quite well documented on video too. I might add.
It didn't seem to change you, though.
I think looking back in the music, though, there's something about Australian musicians and that you can't quite get out. I mean, get rid of. Even if you try, it's still there. Those sensibilities, and even though we soaked up a lot of, like Pete said earlier, the black culture and
Latin
particularly
culture and
rhythms
stuff,
and things like that, we're on the alert for. We still put our own Australianness on top, and which is great. We would never want to lose that because it's quite a precious thing, I believe. And other people around us spotted that and agreed. It was quite an interesting marrying of that period and two cultures. So, in years to come, we'll spot that even more, I think.
Okay. Well, the next track on the album is the song You Wouldn't Want to Know, which, Pete, you've written with Richard Pleasance.
Again, Richard pops up.
Yeah, I wrote a set of lyrics that were quite alienated and disturbing, I thought, and had a very particular rhythm to them. And it was right at the beginning, in this competitive phase that Dale describes, and we're all writing songs. So didn't have any music for it. So I just gave it to Richard.
Yeah, I remember he came out of the bedroom one day and said, "Oh, what do you think of this?" That riff, and I thought, "Oh, that's fantastic, Richard." It had a 60s flavour to it, which we were kind of
Niggling on.
and wanting to explore. And that, to me, I thought, oh yeah, this is a really melodic style flavour coming out immediately.
Sort of an Eastern sort of
And
psychedelic about it, psychedelia about that sort of.
So it came together very quickly. Like Richard had written it. It was a very straightforward song.
And completely across the rhythm of the written lyrics.
Yeah.
Too,
and really hard
which
to
was
sing across.
peculiar.
Really hard to sing like Her Charity or something, because it was like between the sky and the sea, I was close. I was. Only Richard can do it because he's got he doesn't have to tour with us, so his voice is pretty normal.
And he only has to take a breath every 2 minutes.
Yeah, I heard that about him.
Yeah, it's funny that it is a bit of a 60s riff, that thing.
Well, to me, it struck me as that, and I'm a big fan of all that, and I thought, oh yeah, this is great, Rich, and so it was completed really quickly, like a lot of the songs on the album.
Was that the first song we recorded?
It was, yeah.
It was the first one.
It was actually the first song that came from that
being in LA.
Being in that house in LA. Yeah.
So you sort of start the album with Richard and then end up completing it without him. So in the end, did his absence affect your music making?
I think so, because the band were hankering to do a lot of writing together, and Richard's sort of tends to be a bit of a loner there and would bring mostly songs complete, or and you just put the finishing touches on. So at first we're a bit nervous about not having him there, and that's why we wanted him to go over so much too, because of his contribution. But the band by that stage had really tightened up and were developing its own confidence in itself. So there was the opportunity to sort of go, right, let's see if we can do it, and I think we succeeded in just closing up the circle a bit more and strengthen. Like we were, confident, like I said, and
I think once Richard left, we all stuck together. Well, now that Richard's gone, we have this job to do, and I thought it was a lot easier. We all just everyone just sort of headed like an arrow and pointed in the right direction, because we were all very much in the right direction. And occasionally, because Richard wasn't with us, as we explained before, he often sort of would divert to somewhere else, whereas we knew we had to get there, And once he was gone, we headed straight for that point.
Overall, his shadow is still cast over this album. The next track on the record, I Am Nature, is another co-write with Richard.
I again, you know, Richard wrote those lyrics and the melody and everything. Yeah, I like that song too. But of all of the entire album, I think that song's the one that's the least boom crashy sounding song. You know, gee. It's a great song. I can't sort of, you know, I just like singing it. I think it's really melodic.
Yeah, I think we all agree that it is a really good song, and it has its place on the record, and that's probably why it is placed maybe so far back as well. And if you were to ask is it somewhere we're going to lead to next,
say no.
It would be one question you wouldn't really know how to answer that, because you never know until you're stuck in another city with some other problems, you know.
That's the strongest thing about I'm Nature, that it really is Richard's response to Los Angeles, that Richard moved out to the country once his hearing problem developed. So to go from living out near Dalesford to, you know, 2 blocks north of Hollywood Boulevard was like major culture shock, you know, to go from 2 regional TV stations to 60. If it wasn't for the Simpsons, I think Richard would have lost it.
The Simpsons.
The symptoms.
The symptoms, yeah.
And I Am Nature's kind of got that
Angst.
Questioning, confused quality about it. Like, what do you...
All these things around us pushing themselves into our faces. And he's just talking about the sort of, much more so than Australia, there's this very disposable culture that's seems to be prevalent in LA. Everything's so fleeting. You know, the whole Hollywood dream, the people on the street, the violence, the gun culture. It's everything is so disposable. You feel like your life is disposable. You walk down the street, bam, you're dead. You know, and Richard, talking to him, he told me lots of times, look, I really hate being in here. Why can't we go home and do it there? And he was so adamant about, look, we'll do a better job if we went home. And
he was.
Consequently, he went home a few months before we did.
As soon as the riots came, he was the first. I think he almost had his bags packed. Come on, we're out of here.
Let's talk about the artwork. The band has a strong, conscious image. Greg, you've done the album covers for the first 2 albums. Are you responsible for Fabulous Beast as well?
Yes, I did it again. Once again, that house we're in had a garage, and that was like a dungeon where we'd go down and do a bit of rehearsing. Well, you'd go down and do your thing. Yeah, that was my little dungeon. And I did a mural on the side of the wall, which features the inside of the cover. And, you know, I was keeping my eye out for, you know, what's going on, like street art, and, you know, the graffiti is, as you can imagine, LA is just prevalent everywhere. So it was inescapable, and I was seeping in to what I was thinking. And also we the art director and myself were thumbing through a book, and we found a woman from England who was doing some amazing collage work, and that struck me as an interesting element, because that's what we were forming ourselves, you know, all these ideas and influences. And so we got in touch with her, and she does this just incredible illustration for the front cover. And that's actually where the title came from, because she was drawing on mythical topics, and our brief to her was that the band is experiencing this urban pummeling that we got from visual things like television and all those images, but we're also delving into the spiritual side of ourselves, and we wanted to try and get something that the two met. And she just got it right on the nose, I think, and an amazing thing of that's what the Fabulous Beast is. She found this mythical drawing that she based it on called a Fabulous Beast. It's an Egyptian icon, yeah. And I said, oh, this is fantastic, go for that. She just did a couple of rough sketches, and what came back was just a boggler. So
the seeing heart, you know, the eye in the heart, the fish,
yeah,
there's a whole bunch of these images in the one. It's an amazing painting or collage of. It's just an amazing idea on this thing. It's just absolutely amazing.
And what was more astonishing was we were finding as we turned inward and focused the energy inward and joined together as a group, things were starting to happen naturally, like by themselves. So it was all getting very spooky and spiritual.
Yeah.
And to have this person on the other side of the world just come back with an image that was
On the market.
so on the money, it wasn't funny. Was astonishing to us. That, like, we thought the right things are happening, you know. We haven't even... Did you speak to her, Spock?
No, I didn't. Although I found out that she'd had our last album, was actually a fan of the band, unbeknownst to us, and we sent her some songs, rough demos of what we'd been doing, because this Indian and ethnic influence that seemed to be popping up in the music, we wanted to put across that. So she had all, you know, her little resources and elements to draw from, and she did a wonderful job. And I can't wait for everybody to see it.
I used to visit Spock in the garage when he was painting the mural, and we'd been talking about getting people's performances quickly and unself-consciously and not deliberating, and Spock had seemed to spend hours down there, and I'd go down there and he wouldn't actually be doing anything. He'd be looking at a book or something, and the mural would be sitting up there uncompleted on the wall, and he turned to me and said, "Oh, it's got to be like the recording, unself-conscious," and then he'd just walk straight up to the wall and go with a spray can and do something in a split second. And that's it, you know. There's one sort of black blob on the cover that was done at this moment. And then there's another time when Spock walked down the stairs and said to someone, "Oh, it looks a bit too clean," and he's holding a cup of tea. And then he just hurled the cup of tea at the wall and invited people to come and throw oranges and fruit and stuff at it, just to sort of gritty it up a bit, which is all there.
Yeah.
It's all there, the orange.
But it was fun. It was like everything in the whole process. It was a lot of fun.
Everybody got to put something on it, even if it was just an orange.
Getting back to the album, the next track is Don't Let On. Guys, what can you tell us about this one?
The Santana track.
The Deep Purple track.
See, to me, it's a real Latin track. To me, it's got Latin America meets on the Bayou stuff. You know, the Alleluia.
That hammering Hammond organ.
That's where I get
filthy,
the Latin thing.
This blues rock thing it's got.
Can I just tell us a quick story? I was walking out of the studio one afternoon, and we had this programmer. I forget his name.
Phil
Chanel, who was doing some programming for the song. And I was walking out with Keith Fawes, and I heard this great Hammond organ saying, I was going, "Oh, why can't we sound like that?" And he goes, "Oh, that's you." And I went, "You're kidding." And I've always wanted this Latin influence. I've just been influenced by Latin music. And there it was. You know, there's congas and percussion and this amazing organ, which...
Yeah, I'm quite proud of Don't Let On because of the guitar playing. If I can blow a trumpet for a moment. It's just, I think it's a great little snapshot of Richard and I working together, because Richard's on the left and I'm on the right, and I reckon it's neat. It's like dueling banjos.
Well, I thought it was more the final showdown.
Yeah, I got the solo.
Yeah, you got the solo.
Recording studios are pretty sterile places, and often artists bring things and personalise the environment. Did you?
Well,
we started when we first arrived at the studio with Don Gaiman. We walked in. It was a temple of love. They apparently carry all the stuff for them, even when they go overseas, like plastic flowers. There's just amazing incense, candles. It's just they developed this altar thing all around the place.
70s oil lamps.
Oil lamps. There's games. There's toys and tops.
We figured that the Nintendo games were to distract the musicians so that they didn't have a say in the final thing.
and we took that with us, and when we worked with Keith, like Matt says, you know, like, what's all this then? What you climb up the studio?
Yeah, get rid of this hippie shit. What you got us in here? Oh, you know, it's a part of the vibe that we sort of inherited from the last sessions, Keith.
If anyone saw our Unplugged tour last year, they would have seen the incense and the flowers and the whole atmospherics thing, which has been incorporated into our...
It just gives us a state of... I first saw that when Santana first played in Australia. They walked on stage and there was flowers and plants and incense and lights and candles. And I just think it brings this feeling of peace, even though it's not warranted in our music. So you got all this great peaceful religious, well, not connotations, but there's a feeling of harmony and peace, and there's this music.
Yeah, we might slaughter the sacrificial lamb, but the flowers still look pretty.
Even though blood splatters all over the floor.
The last track on the album is Last Place on Earth. It's kind of different. It's very stripped back, but it's also a special song.
Oh, the incense was burning for that one, I can tell you.
Choking on it then.
Just look out the window.
You know, finally Keith Forsey he's bailed and gone off to work with Foreigner. We've got to finish the record by ourselves. We've only got a few days. Engineers are dropping like flies. All of us are just exhausted. And it gets to the very last day.
Very last 2 hours.
And this engineer comes in for the last day. It's his first and only day on the record. And he thinks he's got to do a couple of tambourine overdubs and, you know, a bit of vocals. And we sort of knock all that stuff off. And 5 o'clock, and he goes, "Oh, great, go home now." And we said, "No, we want to do another song." He said, "What, more overdubs?" We said, "No, we want to record an entire song from the ground up now." And he looked a little bit put out, but he went with it and lit the incense. It's a song that Spock and I wrote almost as a joke. It began as a joke. Around the time Better Days was written, about a week after the riots. It's beautifully unself-conscious. And soon as we sort of laughed at first and then thought, my God, this could be fantastic. So I cut back to the last day of recording. Dale had never sung it.
Never heard it?
We lit the incense, went in the room, got the atmosphere right, sort of talked it through, sang a few bits of it. We didn't really nut it out, and we just rolled the tape and played it.
And I thought, I might play a bit of harmonica on this.
We had
Off we go.
There's all the false entries where, you know, we weren't quite sure how it went, and we had an assistant engineer whose marriage had just broken up at the time, and he'd been a bastard all day. He'd been in a really shitty mood, and
We got him.
yeah, he got all
He was
teared
in
up.
tears by the end of the song.
And then I started crying, and that was it.
Yeah, we all had a bit of a cry. Dale did it. The song kind of stops, and we just look at each other, and it just takes off again. And Dale's done this haunting harmonica solo, and we realised at the time that we were off into the unknown here because it was completely unrehearsed or anything, and so we just kept going, and we wrapped the song up. And it was beautiful. We finally achieved what we wanted to do, and that was be that totally unself-conscious and spontaneous approach, and I thought it was fitting for the last track.
We tried to figure out when we were going to mix it. And then Spock just said, "Sounds all right now, mix it now." So we did. So it was all done in an hour. Finished.
And finally, it sounds like it's been an epic journey to make this album. Was there a point in the process where you thought, we're on the way to do what we want to do here?
I think we felt it before we finished it. Because the cover was coming together in the garage with Spock and Janet Woolley's illustration was rolling, it turned up while we were working. And even when Keith Forsey had to leave the project in the last week, like by then it just had a life of its own. It was rolling on. This beast was going to, be born. But the funny thing was, Spock and I did have to go back to LA a couple of months after that, just to wrap up the mixing. And we'd been on tour. We were back in Australian mode again, and we returned to Los Angeles. And Spock just sort of said to me, the vibe, the energy's back again. It's like we've come back to town to this record, and we've slotted straight back to where we were. And we mixed the whole record in 6 days, which is really, for a modern record, that's really fast. Like Better Days, the mix on the record was done in an hour. Now people don't do that, but that's the sort of energy that Fabulous Beast had, that in the end we could just do everything quickly and unself-consciously, and it would be right.
We've come a long way from our first album. I was just looking at Maslen because
City Flat too.
what was that little
Joke?
story, Maz?
The engineer on our first album, Will Gosling, was asked one day what he did for a living. He said, "I mix City Flat." It took how many days?
It took 5 days to mix City Flat in the first album. It took an hour to mix Better Days.
Don't Let On was even shorter.
Don't Let On was mixed in 2 hours, but Don't Let On, we didn't start mixing it till 1:30 in the morning. That we were due out of the studio. By 3:30 it was finished. It was fun.
It's odd to look at it like that.